in today's program, Maryam Kousha, I'm going to interview Azar Majedi. Azar Majedi is a member of European Feminist Initiative Secretariat, and also she's the chairperson of Organization for Women's Liberation. The topic that we're going to talk about today is a very important, but at the same time sad event that's happened in India about the rape and murder of a 23-year-old student who was raped by 6 men for more than an hour on a Delhi bus on the 16th of December. As is all over the news everywhere, she was taken to a hospital in Singapore, but unfortunately and sadly, after 3 days, she died. Today, we're going to talk about different aspects of this event, this brutal attack, and what's going on in India in general. Azar Majedi, thank you very much for accepting to take part in this interview.
Thanks so much for asking me.
Obviously, the whole world is saddened and angry by this criminal act. Why do you think such horrific acts happen in India? I mean, it happens everywhere, but we're particularly talking about India.
Well, violence is a part and parcel of society we live in today. It's, you see violence in many different forms and shapes, and violence against women is a very common thing, not only in India, but also, as you mentioned, in the whole world. For example, in USA, if I'm not mistaken, there's one rape every 3 minutes. And there's a lot of violence against women we see all over the world. We see a lot of violence against children as well. This is not to put, as traditionally people do, put women and children in one same category. It is that you're taking violence, you sort of channeling the violence that is exerted by the whole system upon you somehow, and it's always even in your maddest situation, you seems to have this sort of wisdom of taking your anger against so-called weakest. And anger against women, I think, comes under this category. And rape, it's a sort of violence, is humiliation of women as sort of seen by the dominant ideology, which religion is a very important part of it. I see rape not as a means of some crazy men wanting to sort of satisfy their sexual urges, but as a violent act, as an act to humiliate women, as sort of how the society portrays them.
So, do you think this what happened in India by the 6 men who attacked this young students in the bus is an attack on women in general? Is this a way of aggression, of male aggression against women in a country like India?
Well, I mean, I'm sure they do not see it like that. People who do that, they do not consciously say, okay, this is the act of aggression. And, when you say male aggression, I know you don't mean it that way, but I like to, for people who see this video blog, I like to make a sort of an explanatory point. Male dominance, male aggression, when you put this male as a sort of describing the phenomenon, it seems like men against women. I do not see it like that. As we see, there are so many men in this protest movement right now in India against this brutal act. And in Iran, we see the same thing. A lot of men are involved in the women's rights movement. What it is, I see it as an ideology that male chauvinism or sexism, or if you like, patriarchy, is part of it. So it's an aggression against women, and some men become an instrument of channeling that kind of aggression. I'm sure that's what you meant, but I just wanted to make this point clear. So what it is, you see 6 men on a Sunday on a bus. They see a young girl and a young man getting on a bus, and they just go on this crazy spree of beating them both up, raping the woman 6 times, gang rape, beating her up and throwing them out of a bus. This cannot be anything but just some kind of urge to sort of get violent. And what you see is a society that's full of violence against all the citizens. And for example, in India, I like to make this point clear. Actually, when you see it, India is one of the biggest economy of the world. The poverty in this country is so abhorrent, and there are millions of children on the street, or the slavery of children, both in prostitution and in labor, abusing children, and there are a lot of homeless people. Poverty is so vast in India. Actually, the gap between the rich and poor, I think this is the very important violence in the society. When you see these class differences in that sort of form, I'm not surprised. And the police also is very violent. The whole system is violent. The corruption of the system, all of that somehow channels itself in different kind of manifestation of violence in the society, and violence against women becomes one of the very terrible one.
So you think you what you're saying is that because of corruption in the whole country, in the government, in the police force, and poverty, class differences, and all the things that make a society go down in social structures and everything, it manifests itself in some cases in rape. Is that what you're trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that there have been many more cases of rape in India. Each one of them tell a story of really unspeakable damage and suppression against women, as it is in other countries, but we're concentrating on India. In one word, it's just violence against women. I mean, there are cases like in 1972, for example, a 16-year-old girl was raped in India by 2 policemen inside the police station. And they said that she was not fighting enough or hard enough. In 92, there was another case where a state worker, a social worker, a woman, was trying to prevent a child marriage from taking place. And she was raped by 5 men, including the father of the child whose marriage she had tried to prevent. And there are many cases that although it's all horrific, and everywhere is horrific, not just in India, but it seems as though the rape is used as punishment by people. A rape of women, I'm talking about, is and it's been not encouraged directly, but not confronted either by the government, and it's actually done by a government agency, which is the police. What do you think to that?
Well, that's what I was trying to say, and you gave some good examples of actually to the point I was trying to make. I'm not trying to put a cliche up here or trying to actually take the blame where it's due. What I'm trying to do is violence in the society has its material basis somewhere. Where? A society built upon the pillars of violence. Violence of the ruling classes against the people, the police, the whole the court, the whole ruling class, the capitalist class. And when you look at it, I do not see poverty is the mother of violence to me. When you have small children, hungry, homeless, on the street, what worse than this can you actually think of as a violence a society can show to people, to humanity? You have millions of these children. Slavery, labor slavery of small children is such a known phenomenon in India. Selling or taking actually your organs when you go to hospitals in order to sell it to some more well-off patients. That's a very well-known phenomenon in India. And you have such low wages. The gap between the rich and poor is so huge. So you have this whole system of violence that is kept by the police, by jails, by prisons, by court, by ideology. And what is this ideology? The ideology of castes in society. In India, you have some what's called caste is kind of racism, that you have some of the some categories on the side of the society. They're supposed to be at the bottom of the society without any rights. And then you have women. Patriarchy or male chauvinism or sexism, whatever you like to call that phenomenon. And religion is actually a very important ideological means to portray women as subhumans, as sort of property of men, who are actually who should be put down, who should be humiliated. And rape. I think rape is a very, very particular phenomenon in society during the history. I like to mention this point. For example, most religions, I'll talk about Islam, which I'm most familiar with. In Islam, this is just said all over Quran, that when the Muslim army attacks the so-called pagans or whatever, in order to sort of take Islam to that community, they kill the men, they take women as slaves, and these slaves are the property of the victorious side, and all men can rape them. So rape is used both as punishment and as reward. Punishment, when you want to punish a woman, you rape her, you humiliate her. And not only that, you also rape the women of a community in order to shame the whole community, then a nationality, shame the men of those community or nationality. It's a very tribal point of view, which is taken all the way to here. Still, we see it, it happens. And so rape is a very, very brutal method of violence and humiliation used against women. For example, in the case you used in the wedding, what did those men wanted to do? Raping that social worker is just to give her a lesson. Not only to her, to everybody who's trying to work like that. Said, know your place. So they rape her. They rape her. This is a very important point to know, that rape is used as a method of humiliation and violence, which the whole society actually produce and reproduce.
Yes, that was a very important point that you mentioned about using rape as a means of punishing people in a society. And the other aspect of it is that the apathy from the state and silence imposed on victims, that they be shamed by violence done to them, makes the whole fight against sexual violence so difficult. Don't you think so?
Well, you see, I would go further than just saying apathy. It's not apathy. They actually take side with it. The reason that you see this turbulent movement in India that has shocked the world is that they see the state actually encouraging, supporting these acts of violence and humiliation. In many countries, see, for example, look, you just mentioned another point about two policemen, men, raping a 16-year-old in India. We have cases after cases in Iran that the security police, the pasdarans, the whole system, the government, they rape prisoners as a means of torture or as just means of humiliating them. We had that 16-year-old girl a few years ago, Atife Rajabi, I think her name was. She also had some kind of mental disturbances. The judge, all the jail keepers, they raped her and then killed her, executed her, and she was only 16. That's the case that was all over. 3 years ago, we had few very well-known cases of young women who were raped, gang raped in prison, and then either was just thrown out or their bodies were burnt. That their pictures were all over. So, and we have it everywhere that you see political prisoners. Rape is used as a method of both torturing women and also humiliating and in a way torturing the men connected to that woman. It's been used everywhere. So the fact that they just have apathy, I think we should go further and say rape as part of violence of the system is part and parcel of this political, economical system that rules India and many societies.
Well, you talked about the wave of protests in India. You just mentioned it. That was actually my next question. It's an amazing event that is happening in India, a wave of protests by all the population against this criminal act and against rape in general, something that we hadn't seen before. I mean, I'm sure there have been protests before, but not to this scale. And I'm sure everybody knows, as we've been talking about it, rape and violence against women is nothing new in India. But the scale of protests this time is amazing, and it's actually very promising. What do you think of this phenomenon?
I was shocked. I was excited. I came to tears when I heard about this almost uprising in India, especially in Delhi and also other places, of people coming to the street against violence against women and also against rape and against the police. And the fact that police and the system does not take this act seriously and somehow condones it. So, it was so exciting. And then there were, besides the news, there were very, very touching pictures on Facebook about what was happening. One of them that was very touching is a picture of over 600, I think there are 609 guitar players who have, in Delhi, mostly young, are sitting and playing John Lennon's song Imagine as a tribute to this murdered girl, which was beautiful. And the fact that you have to gather these 609 guitar players, put them somewhere, and think of Imagine, which is a very, very beautiful and meaningful song in that sort of event. And we've seen pictures of women taking these sort of batons, kind of wooden batons, this just very common in India when the police uses them, fighting with the police. The police is trying to beat these women, and women are trying to beat the police back, and there's women coming to help them. And there's another picture of some women in sort of pinkish red Indian clothes, and then they all have these kind of wooden buttons, and they are a sort of vigilantes group to fight against violence against women, domestic violence and rape. And I read about them, and that they have taken matters into their own hands. And if they hear of a man beating his wife up or have cases of domestic violence, they go and beat the man up, or the person who's raped somebody. So all these pictures have come out, and such huge protests. And then you look at it, say, my goodness, haven't seen anything like that in India, or at least maybe I'm unaware of it, but I hadn't really anything. When I think nothing like that in India. And you had seen like violence, again, sectarian violence of one sect against the other when they get angry. But this one is the whole show of humanity, equality, freedom, progressiveness. And I really think this is not going to stop like that in India. It's going to go further. And the fact that the government has taken it so seriously and has tried to fast track this case and do something about it, I think it's not only because of the protest against violence against women, but is afraid that this might lead to other kind of socio-political protests that we've been seeing in Middle East, for example, or in North Africa. I think this is what the government rightly is scared of.
Talking about what is being done now, the 5 in custody and 1 to be tried in a juvenile court, and they're talking about the death penalty for them. I know that from previous interviews you were against death penalty. What do you think in this case? What's your view on that?
I'm totally against it. I'm totally against it because really it's not because from a humanitarian point of view you're against killing another human being, whatever that person has done or committed. Is also, I don't think death penalty is a solution. Death penalty only actually worsens the scale of violence, increases the scale of violence in a society. We have very, very good examples of that. The researchers have done for so long. In the United States, take it for example, you have some states that are that have abolished capital punishment. In some states that still carry it on. In the states that have abolished it, there is less murder and less crime, or less violent crime, in comparison to the ones who are still carry on death penalty. Death penalty does not decrease violence, does not work as a deterrent to another murder, to another rape. The history has shown it, all the research is showing it, that that's not the answer. My heart goes to the parents of this young girl, and I really feel for these parents. Being a parent myself, I can really feel how hard, how terrible, how tragic it could be if you see your loved one, your child, is being murdered in such a brutal way. But I like to tell the father of this girl, who's been told, that has asked for death penalty will not give your beloved child back. Revenging this way will not actually put your heart or your mind or your conscience at peace, and also it would not deter any other such acts in the future. It might even make it worse. So I would really, really think death penalty is not the answer. The right-wing side of the politics, they always ask for death penalty because this is how they see the society: punishment, punishment, punishment. And these kind of punishments they think could keep a good capitalist society, that workers work and listen to their employers. I think that's how the whole mentality works. But this is not the answer. I think places that have abolished death penalty and have resorted to more educating methods of dealing with criminals have got much better results in reducing murder, rapes, and violence. This is a known fact. You just, I mean, I'm sure there have been a lot of research done, and there's not any reason for me to go further into this. And I really think, for example, one of the people who's committed this murder is 17 years old. I know he's going to be dealt with in juvenile court, but the other one might be 19 or something. Really, do you think killing that 19-year-old boy would change anything? Would do anything to ameliorate the conditions of women in the society? Or if you can create some ways of educating or giving them to understand what crimes they have committed, to understand about people's equality and women's rights and so on and so forth, I think that would be the answer, that even that 19-year-old boy could become a very good worker, activist for women's equality and against rape and murder. So I really wish that we could take this message to all those protesters in India, to all those families who've lost a loved one to rape, and all the women who've become victim of rape, that death penalty does not solve the question. We have to take matters into our hands and try to bring real justice to the society. I think that would be the real answer.
Yeah, of course, death penalty does not deter violence. Unfortunately, there was the news today, actually, that there was another rape case in India. But lastly, I would like to ask you if you've got any message of solidarity to the protesters, if any of them in India are watching this video blog. What would be your message?
My heart is with you. My mind is with you, and my organization for women's liberation has been the past 10 years that's been founded. It's been working. It's been working hard for women's rights, women's equality, women's freedom, against violence against women, against rape. In Iran, in all those countries, especially in Iran and countries under the rule of Islam, which we know so humiliates women and regards women as subhuman. And we are supporting you. You have our solidarity, and I hope this movement does not stop here, does not stop after the court is finished and has dealt with the perpetrators, and it would continue as a movement for women's rights, as a movement for women's equality, as a movement against violence, against rape, and as a movement to bring more justice to Indian society. The Indian society has to be changed. The way it is, violence is going to be always a part and parcel of that society. And I really wish that we could see at the same time a move against death penalty in India and in this case.
Thank you, Azar.
Thank you, Maria.